guys, I'm Leya.
I'm Remy.
Welcome to In the Loop, a podcast by Civic Duty Race. This week on the podcast, we're going to be focusing on the issue of food insecurity. But before we get there, we want to talk about some things that are going on in the world that we think that you should be thinking about. So to start off with, we know that the big news story of this week and last week and probably the week before and probably also next week is the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearing process. And this has been a lot over the past few weeks. I don't know if there's any other way to say that. And so while we're not going to sort of delve into the details of the story, we just want to say, please take care of yourself if sexual assault is an issue that it's hard for you to deal with. If you're here at Rice, you can reach out for help by calling 713-348-3311, and that'll connect you to Wellbeing or counseling or Title IX, whatever is most helpful for you. And, you know, while obviously we care about what's going on in the news, that's why we make this podcast, we also want to remind you that, you know, put yourself first.
Yeah.
Okay, so in other news, something that you might not have heard a lot about that we want to kind of spotlight is the tsunami and earthquake that recently happened in Indonesia. As of the day that we're recording this episode, the official death toll is about 1,400 people. And there are thousands more injured and more than 70,000 people that have been displaced from their homes. The UN estimates that about 200,000 people in Indonesia need urgent help. And this is something that I think is not getting a lot of coverage in the U.S. news, but that we really think is an important issue. And if you are interested in lending help, we'll leave a link in the description of this podcast that lists out some resources.
In other news, in very recent news, as of today, Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018, the U.S. government tested a presidential alert system at around 2:18 p.m. Eastern Time, or 1:18 p.m. Central Time, because we are in Houston, as a matter of fact. The alert system was reportedly designed to inform the entire country at once in the event of a severe public emergency, such as a terrorist attack or, God forbid, an invasion. This is what the Federal Emergency Management Agency stated when the presidential alert system was announced earlier this week. In case you didn't get it, because for whatever reason, not every single cell phone received the message, this is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed. I don't really know what to say about that.
Did you get the text?
I got the text. Did you get the text?
I did not get the text.
See, that's the strangest thing. You'd think they'd, well.
I mean, I guess that's why they did the test, to figure out
to see if it worked. Nah, yeah, you'd think. But anyway, moving on to our main topic for today, food insecurity.
Yeah, so this is something that we've wanted to talk about on the podcast for a long time, really, and we just kind of struggled with, like, how to frame it and, like, what lens and who we wanted to talk to and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then during O Week, actually, or I guess right before, during advisory training, we had a talk about student success initiatives, which is a resource here on campus that helps students with, like, you know, anything they're struggling with, really. And they talked about how they wanted to start an on-campus food pantry, and they gave us some really interesting numbers about the number of students who struggle with food insecurity in college specifically. So that's why we kind of decided to focus on that today. And we really wanted to highlight this really cool new thing that they're doing.
In order to learn more specifically about food insecurity in college, we have Carli Rosati from Student Success Initiatives here to talk with us today. She helped develop the pantry, an on-campus food pantry that became available to students this fall. Carli, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
What are some of the issues you work with students on most frequently?
Yeah, so in Student Success Initiatives, I'm the assistant director. So majority of what I do is I work in advising, so working one-on-one with students. And it's for a lot of different things. So some students just come in to chat about life, but some students it's helping them with study skills, getting organized. And then specifically our office really tries hard to support the first generation and low-income community. So whether you're the first in your family to come to college or you're just from low-income background, we support you in that way too. So we help with that as well. Yeah.
How often does food security come up as an issue when you're advising students?
Yeah, so me personally, I'm fairly new to the position,
Mhm.
so I moved to Houston in May. So in my personal conversations, only a couple times since I've been here, but I know like anecdotally through the
Mhm.
team that that's something that does certainly come up, particularly with students that are first gen, low income, off campus students, things like that.
You mentioned before the interview that you didn't have rice-specific information, but can you talk a little more about the trends in food insecurity among college students?
Sure, absolutely. So, just very quickly to define food insecurity. So, it's defined by the USDA as consistent access to adequate food is limited by a lack of money or other resources at times throughout the year. So, this means that there's a financial component to it, but there's also other things to think about. So, transportation, if you have time to kind of prepare meals, those types of things as well that are kind of limiting factors to your ability to kind of sustain yourself with nutritionally sound food. So just looking at some of the statistics nationwide for students, there's definitely a trend in kind of student demographics that goes more towards the quote-unquote non-traditional student. So right now, 73% of students are considered non-traditional, meaning that they are not supported by their parents while they're at college, parents or guardians, I suppose. 52% of students live below the poverty line who live off campus and are not living with a guardian. So that's a pretty staggering number. So definitely off-campus students, while we don't want to target them specifically, but we know that this is something that nationwide they tend to struggle with a little bit more, and we want to support them in those ways. So nationwide, there's about 641 members of the Campus and University Food Bank Alliance as of June 2018. So we know that campuses nationwide are kind of moving towards this model of providing food on campus. And that's for a number of reasons, just because it's while we don't have specific numbers for rice in particular, most campuses actually do not, because it's really hard to track. So and that's for a number of reasons as well. So there's some stigma associated with it, obviously, and it's kind of just hard to distribute those types of surveys and get back real numbers and actually get people to respond and all of those things. So that's one of the reasons that most campus food pantries kind of operate on a good faith basis, meaning it's usually anonymous. You don't have to kind of prove that you're low income or you're food insecure in any way. So you just kind of come and you get what you need. And the reason that it's really important that we have them on campuses, because a lot of the time people are like, oh, there's tons of food banks in, for example, in Houston, there are food banks and there's food pantries, and while they're doing great support as well, kind of touching on what I talked about earlier with transportation, it's really important that we have a centralized location for students and a place that they're already frequenting, hopefully going to classes, doing those types of things. So it's centralized in that way, and also in a space where they feel comfortable. So that's something that SSI, Student Success Initiatives, is really focusing on and hoping to create an environment where students feel comfortable to stop by, kind of get what they need, a welcoming place, a place that kind of humanizes the experience. So that's kind of a little bit about what we're doing and what's happening nationwide on campuses.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember during a week advisor training, I guess, they talked about how the pantry was going to be a resource that was going to be available this year to students, and whoever was giving the presentation for SSI mentioned that 50% number, and I was kind of surprised but also kind of not surprised, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was something that really stood out to me. That was maybe the first new thing that I had learned as a 3-time advisor during advisor training.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's we know that the cost of college is rising in a lot of ways, and living off campus can be really expensive, and then just kind of navigating, you live off campus now and maybe you are happy with that, but it cuts into study time and things like that. So finding time to go to the store and then prepare meals, or maybe you're not kind of equipped to prepare meals, or you don't have those supplies. So yeah, so definitely it's a staggering number, but it makes sense in some ways.
What challenges, if any, have you faced both in the development and now the first few months of implementation of this project?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say there have been too many challenges, but I would say that kind of our biggest focus point right now is kind of getting the word out. And so we've kind of tried to post on our social media a bit. We have some signage in front of the SSI offices as well, but we kind of know that these things travel the most through word of mouth. So that's kind of how we're hoping that the word will get out. So while we definitely have, students students that are using it regularly, we're hoping that all the students that need it feel comfortable to come and know it's a resource, and that when they come, they have a positive experience with it. So that's something that we're really focused on, and so we're just we're anticipating it to grow even more.
Do you have any plans to expand or to change the pantry in future semesters?
Yeah, so right now all of our goods are non-perishable, and then we recently added feminine hygiene products, which we're really excited
cool.
about as well. Yeah, so that was actually within this last week, so we're really excited about that. A lot of campus pantries, like our dream ones that we kind of look at and we're like, oh wow, they're in a lot bigger spaces. Some of them are able to offer like fresh fruit and vegetables and things like that. That obviously requires like a different level of like inspections and certifications to make sure that you can do all of that, which is a totally different conversation. But another thing that we're kind of just hoping to continue to improve is that even though it's an anonymous resource, which we definitely want to emphasize with the campus community, and it's for students, staff, faculty, like anybody. We're not kind of taking student ID cards or anything like that. But one thing we do is we have them fill out a short survey just about what they took, what their experience was like, and if there's anything that they want to see in the future. So this way, as we get donations and as we go shopping with like, money that's been donated to us and things like that, we can continue to improve and kind of get the things that everyone that needs them, we can get them what they want. Because right now we're kind of just going with the staples and things that we thought like were frequently used. So yeah.
Is there anything we didn't bring up that you'd like to discuss? Maybe like anecdotal, any stories or
anything else that you like want students to know about the pantry?
Just straight advertising? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing about the pantry that we are really relying on, this kind of like rice culture of care thing, is that we are going to be sustained by mostly donations and gifts. So one thing we're trying to organize with the colleges is maybe like some kind of donation drive or things like that. But the thing that's actually the most helpful to give is money. And that's because of one, space, but two, also when we buy in bulk, we're able to get a lot more. And then like I mentioned earlier, we're kind of able to like specialize what we're getting based on the students that frequent and kind of what they're looking for or what they're missing in their diets. So I suppose that's something that's really important. So if you're interested in that, I'm happy to field any questions about those. My email is cmr14@rice.edu. So I guess if anyone had any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm totally open to having people stop by. I keep my blinds open, so if you see a student's not in there, you could stop by and chat with me. I'm happy to show anyone the space. Also, our scheduled hours for the semester are Mondays and Fridays from 3 to 4 p.m., and then Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m., but it's also available by request. Same way, you just email me or stop by, and we'll make sure you get connected and get whatever you need.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put Carli's email in the description of the podcast so that you guys can have that visually as well.
Yes, in case any of you aren't fast listeners. I know I'm not.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Okay, so we like to end every episode of our podcast with a sort of call to action where we tell our listeners how they can get involved with the issue that we're discussing. So we were wondering if you had any other resources that you would recommend to students who are struggling with food insecurity, both sort of here at Rice or in the Houston community in general.
Yeah, so I think that the Houston community has a whole lot to offer. So there's a lot of food banks and food pantries in the area that students can definitely get connected with. I would encourage any students that have any questions or if maybe they're impacted by food insecurity to definitely reach out to anybody in SSI. We're always taking student appointments. We take walk-ins, and we're kind of always happy to help you navigate those types of things. So I would definitely say that, and that if there's anything that you need that we're not providing, what we're kind of relying on is the student feedback. So that's really important to us. So if there's a way that you can see that we can improve, or maybe a way to make it seem like a more welcoming experience, we're always open to that. So we're definitely just trying to, do our best to make it like a welcoming and humanizing experience, especially just surrounding a topic that's especially sensitive.
For students who would like to help with reducing issues of food insecurity, is there anything you would recommend they do?
Yeah, so I would say definitely just to, as much as you can when you're talking about it. I think it's important to talk about it, but also to make sure that you're not saying things that are well-intentioned but are maybe hurtful or kind of make people feel marginalized in some way. So saying like, oh, I don't think food insecurity is like super prevalent on our campus or things like that. So while it might be a statistical minority, just making sure that we're not making people feel like they're on the outskirts or like they should feel like ashamed or shame associated with, their food insecure status or whatever that may be. So I think one, being mindful with your words. Two, helping to spread the word. So if you know about it, talk about it, that we have a food pantry. The pantry is open for use, and we're definitely trying to, get as many people supported in whatever ways we can. And then lastly, donate. And some things to keep in mind with donating is we're only taking non-perishables for now. And then some other things to keep in mind is that it's kind of helpful to make sure that we're thinking about the population that we're serving. So not in all cases, but when you're able to, it's helpful if like canned food items don't require a can opener because sometimes students don't have those. Things like dried beans, while those are really popular in a lot of food pantries, it's like a huge time commitment. You need certain like kitchen tools to do those types of things, so we try to be mindful about that as well. If you have any questions, just ask, and we're happy to answer any of those. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here today and talking with us. I definitely learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll wrap up the episode by really quickly just advertising that, as always, if this issue matters to you and you have the ability, please vote. The election is coming up. And if you're not registered here at Rice and would like to be, you can feel free to reach out to me. My email is lrm6@rice.edu, and I will hook you up with a voter registration form. Or if you would like to vote in your home state, you can go to vote.org, and they have a really easy tool that helps you request an absentee ballot. But that's kind of what we're focusing on as a club at Civic Duty is we really want everyone to use the voice that they have, and an important way to do that is to vote in this election.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and for sharing this knowledge.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm very glad you all reached out. I'm happy to talk about this anytime. So as genuinely as I can convey that through just my voice, please reach out, ask questions, set up a meeting with me, or just stop by. I'm happy to chat about it.
Cool. Be sure to like the podcast if you're listening on SoundCloud, and subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast if you want to keep getting new episodes from us.
Make sure to like our page on Facebook, and we have recently created a Snapchat and Instagram, so make sure to follow us.
And a Twitter.
There. And a Twitter.
Yes.
So
you can find us on all of those platforms at In the Loop Rice.
And we will make sure to link those because, again, those having clickable links are important.
True. What a way to end this. Okay. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for staying in the loop.
We'll catch you next Sunday.